Hello, brothers, sisters, and friends, and welcome to a special edition of the Fight Like Hell podcast. We're here in downtown Cleveland, Ohio, and we're doing a day one recap of our national rap session. I'm Ed Morgan, your host, and with me as always is our national president, Brian Renfro. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Hey, Eddie, doing great. We had a great day here in Cleveland, and we're excited to have some special guests that our listeners can hear from and talk all about what we did here at the National Rap Session today.
So I'm going to introduce them. We'll start with closest to me, and we'll work our way down. We have Jose Romero from Branch 504. He's the branch president of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
We have Jenilee Jackson from Branch 849 in Fort Collins, Colorado. Hey, Jenilee, how are you?
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And last but not least, we have Rich McLehose from Branch 6000 in Long Island, New York. Rich, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure to be here, Ed. Thank you.
So if you guys want to just talk a little about yourself, give us a little bio just so our listeners and viewers can know who you are. So, Jose, do you just want to talk about yourself and what your branch is like?
So it's sort of a medium-sized branch, about more or less 500 active carriers, a little over 200 retiree members. I like to think that our branch is pretty involved just in the membership. It's high 90s% membership in the union, and we're all just really just trying to work together and make it a better place. So,
good job. Jenilee, how about you?
So I'm about an hour north of Denver, is where Fort Collins is located in Colorado, because I don't know, it's a square state. But so my branch is about 102-ish active members, give or take a couple, and around 50 or 60 retirees. So it's a smaller branch, but it's nice because we're a pretty close-knit branch, I feel like. I know all of the active carriers, at least by face and name, and most of the retirees at this point too, which is nice. And I don't know, we have some really great participation in my branch. We're usually around 20 or 25 of our members are at a meeting, which is pretty high percentage-wise as far as participation with that. So I'm excited to, a lot of the things that they've shared with me before and issues that we deal with locally, but things that I see elsewhere too. I'm excited to see what we can do about those things.
Rich, can you tell us about Branch 6000?
Sure, Ed. I come from Long Island Merge Branch 6000. Branch 6000 has approximately 3,200 active members and about 1,400 retirees. We cover from the end of Long Island all the way to the Queens border. I've got about 124 associate offices, so we're spread out all over the place. I have 7 full-time offices, and some of the best offices I've seen in my 29 years up on as a full-time officer myself. I have 42 years on the job, and been involved with a lot of things. I was very involved with our Congress people on Long Island, and I'm proud to say I'm president, and I'm proud of the people I represent.
Well said. So today was day one of the rap session, national rap session. So Brian, I have a few questions for you before we get it and talk to our presidents here. What was the goal of this rap session?
Yeah, well, the first reason we have this rap session is our Constitution requires it. So every other year, the years that we do not have a national convention, we have a national conference that our branch and state presidents or their designees attend. And over the years, depending on what was going on, what were the pressing issues with the union at the time at these rap sessions have been dedicated to different topics. And for this one we'll talk a lot about the rest of this episode. A lot of it had to do with using this time the best way we could with our branch leaders to help in our preparation for collective bargaining.
And how was this different than a normal rap session?
Yeah, so normally the way rap sessions are structured, they happen over a weekend. People travel in typically on Friday. We have a little welcome get-together on Friday night, and then all day on Saturday we have workshops for our branch and state presidents to come and kind of get the latest information. Typically they're taught by national resident officers and our headquarters staff. We decided to change that a little bit because of where we are in the preparation process for collective bargaining. So rather than having these traditional workshops, we had these sessions where our executive council members that have been working on different topics presented some of the ideas they've been working on in collective bargaining, and got a lot of feedback from our attendees, and just had what I think was some really useful back and forth.
So for our members that aren't here this week, can you talk about what we did today and exactly like what this structure looked like?
Sure. So I guess we start with, we have 6 different subcommittees of members of our executive council that have certain pieces of the contract assigned to them. Our executive council members each chose which topics they wanted to work on. So they have been working for a few months now, meeting at least weekly, in most cases more often than that, to develop what NLC's contract or collective bargaining proposals will be come February of next year when we begin. So we wanted to, number one, give all of the attendees here, which is normally in the 1,200 or so range, our branch and state presidents, the opportunity to hear from each of these 6 subcommittees about the different topics that they have been working on, and then of course to have the opportunity to give feedback on those topics, or offer anything else that could be useful feedback that came to mind with the topics they were assigned to cover. So we split them into 2 rooms. There were actually 4 sessions, if we want to call it that. A couple of the committees, which I'll get to in just a minute, we combined them together because some articles of the contract require a ton of work. For example, Article 8, overtime. We have other articles of the contract that typically don't require as much work because they're much shorter. For example, think of parking. That's something that's been unchanged for a long time, so it was unlikely it would require a lot of work. So these committees got together, and the work that they've done over the last few months, we basically tried to educate the attendees as to the work they've done, and then really dig into the topic. So each of the presentations started with an introduction, talked about the people that were there. In just a minute, I'm going to explain who's on what committee and what topics they covered, just to be sure our listeners have a good understanding of what took place here. They talked about what their process was, that they had reviewed official bargaining positions of the union, and a lot of other information that we provided to them. And then they talked about the things that they had been working on. They talked about the topics within the articles they were assigned to cover that they thought were important for us to try to address in collective bargaining. And then after they were done with their presentation, which took, up to half an hour or so, I guess, on average, all the branch and state presidents in attendance had the opportunity to come up to the microphone and just have discussion back and forth, and express their ideas and opinions, maybe ask questions about some of the topics that were brought up. So we divided them, as I said, into 4 separate workshops, but there were 6 committees, and I'm going to, as quickly as I can, go through and explain what each of those committees, who was on each of those committees and what topics they were assigned to which articles they were assigned to present the proposals today, so that when we hear from our branch presidents that have joined us, you'll have some idea of what they heard today. The first, and these are in no particular order, is a subcommittee of Stephanie Stewart, the Director of Health Benefits, Dan Versluis, our MBA from Region 4, Eddie Davidson, our MBA from Region 9, and one of our headquarters staffers in the contract administration unit, Danielle Fake Mormon, works with them as staff. They are responsible for Article 10, leave, Article 11, which covers holidays, Article 16, which is the discipline procedure, and a good bit of Appendix B, which primarily applies contractual things that apply to CCAs. The second of the 6 is a committee made up of Manny Peralta, the Director of Safety and Health, Patrick Johnson, business agent from Region 7, and Sean Boyd, our business agent from Region 10. They are assigned really safety-related articles. Article 13, pretty commonly called light duty. Article 14, Safety and Health, and then Article 35, the Employee Assistance Program, or EAP. The third group, Dan Toth, the Director of Retired Members, Rick DeCecca, National Business Agent of Region 14, Steve Lassen, our NBA from Region 8, Nick Vafiatis, our NBA from Region 2, David Teagarden, our NBA from Region 5, and Charlie Heege, one of our national trustees, as well as Greg Dixon, who's one of our headquarters staffers that works in contract administration. Grievance and steward activity is the primary focus of the articles that they were assigned to cover. Article 5, which is an article about the prohibition of unilateral action. Article 15, our grievance procedure, and Articles 17 and 31 that have a lot to do with representation and stewards' rights and union management cooperation. The fourth group is a group that is made up of James Henry, our Vice President, Mac Julian, our Assistant Secretary Treasurer, Chris Jackson, Director of City Delivery, David Mudd, our MBA from Region 6, Bruce Didrikson, our MBA from Region 15, and Ron Osborne, one of our headquarters staffers that works with me. A lot of city delivery heavy stuff. Article 4, what we call TechMech, technological and mechanization changes. Article 8, of course, hours of work most people are familiar with. And then another really important one, Article 41, the craft article. So many things in Article 41 that are specific to letter carriers and our jobs. The fifth group is Jim Yates, Director of Life Insurance, Mike Cariff, NBA from Region 3, Mark Camilli, NBA from Region 11, Brian Thompson, our NBA from Region 12, and Stephen Stewart, one of our headquarters letter carrier staffers. And they are working on Article 7, which is a pretty wide-ranging article about classifications of employees. Article 12, all about seniority and reassignment and accessing and withholding, and a very important topic, an increasingly important topic that's covered in Article 26, and that is uniforms. And finally, the last group, Nicole Ryan, Secretary Treasurer, Veda Preston, the NBA from Region 13, Sandy Lamel, one of our national trustees, and Jazzy Correa, one of our headquarters contract administration staffers. They have a whole bunch of articles. Article 1, which recognizes NALC as the bargaining representative for letter carriers. Article 2, non-discrimination and civil rights. Article 20 is about parking. Article 22, bulletin boards. Article 23, union official rights to enter postal installations. Article 24, about employees on leave on union business. Article 25, higher level assignments. Article 27 and 28. Article 27 is employee claims. We claim something. Article 28, employer claims. Article 29, about driving privileges that limits what can be done when a letter carrier loses their driving privileges in a good way that's beneficial to us. Article 30, local implementation. This is where what most folks commonly know as our LMOUs, our local memorandums of understanding, come from. Article 33, which is not terribly relevant these days in the letter carrier craft. Article 36, credit unions and travel, and Article 42, language that thankfully we have not had to use in a long, long time, if ever, about energy shortages. So all of those topics, that sounded like a lot, but every one of those topics were discussed, and these committees reported on each of those articles, the things that they were working on, and had some really good discussion back and forth. And I think better than hearing from Eddie and I about what those discussions entailed, it would be great to hear from our branch presidents that were there and involved and participated in those discussions. What do you think, Eddie?
That sounds great to me.
All right. So let's start, first off, Jose and Jenilee and Richie, we really appreciate you guys joining us. And I've got a lot of questions. I'm not going to ask all three of you to answer every question, but the first question I do think is probably important to hear from all three of you, and that is just your kind of overall thoughts having been through this all day. What did you in general think of the presentations, and maybe we'll dive into some. Richie, we'll start with you.
I was very impressed with the presentation today. I've been coming to these things since 1984, and this was probably one of the better presentations that I've seen. The open opportunity to have a wide open discussion, knowing that rank and file members are the ones that came up with a lot of these ideas. And I really appreciated the sincerity of the conversations. It wasn't just all lockstep. People spoke what was on their mind, and they were answered by those in the dais, what was on their mind. So I got to say, in all my years, this was probably one of the better ones. Took a lot out of it. Took a lot from this, listening to everybody from around the country talk. So it was good for me. So it was good for the members that I brought.
Thank you. Jenilee?
So I thought it was really interesting. It was a long day today. I think this is only my second national rap session. I'm pretty new to all the union stuff, relatively speaking. But it was a long day. Like, we were in the classes or the presentations for a couple of hours each, with a short break in between. But it was neat to see how many ideas there are, because I feel like it's really easy to be angry about a lot of things, but it's a lot harder to come up with solutions to the things that you're angry about. And so it was really neat to hear some of the ideas that were presented to us throughout the day, but also that the rank and file who were here and who were commenting at the microphones, ideas that they had that national officers or the staffers or anybody hadn't maybe thought of. And so I think it was a great exchange. I felt like everybody was very respectful all day on both sides, and so I actually think the conversations that happened today were very productive and very informative as well.
Very cool. Jose?
The big part that I took away are the parts that I focus on, just because of the makeup of my branch. It's, approximately 30% of very new employees, CCAs, PTFs. So hearing this stuff about Article 13, with potentially including, those non-career employees with light duty assignments, talking about the uniform stuff and how that helps, because once you've been a carrier for a while, you open up your closet and most of it's blue, right? But these new employees, just trying to figure out a way to get to that point where, we all have those blue parts of our closet. But as they both mentioned as well, I've been to a few different rap sessions, and this one, just being able to hear what these potential proposals might be, gives an idea of, because we all talk to our members and we hear this would be better this way, this would be better that way. But to know that the feedback that we've had from these, these carriers that came to discuss these issues, and knowing that those could potentially be part of our bargaining points is really exciting.
Very cool.
Yeah, great.
Well, for the next one, Jose, I'm going to go right back to you. I think the topics that were presented, there's a lot of bargaining goals that everybody knows, that we may want to achieve, and a lot of that was presented today. But was there anything that you can recall that was presented or that you learned that you didn't know going in?
Some of what, for me, and it was the most recent session, which is probably why it's still freshest in my mind, but I was, with the person I was sitting with, he said, the Article 15 stuff, the Step B stuff, the arbitration stuff, the steward stuff, he's not super involved at those higher levels other than, at the informal and formal A level. So some of that, he said, it didn't make a whole lot of sense with like the numbers that we were talking about and stuff. But for me, being very, very active at the formal level, and then also an arbitration advocate, to hear some of those goals that we're working toward to reduce, the number of grievances at Step B, because that can be particularly frustrating. You send something up, you tell a grievant, hey, we've moved this up, and luckily in our region, we don't have that months and months long delay, but it's definitely not within 2 weeks, right? So seeing us as a union move toward getting those grievances at that level resolved a little sooner, I was very excited about that part of the presentation.
Awesome. So, Jenilee, you always have lots of questions, so this next one's for you. Were you able to get all your questions answered or submit your comments in these workshops?
I didn't have as many questions or comments as I normally do at a training because I always have questions. But there were a lot of great questions that were asked by other people. I did have one. I know they were talking about, proposing a pause on implementation for certain types of grievances like route count adjustments. And so, right now management has weaponized route counts across stations, and then everything just gets hung up in the grievance procedure, and then they have to wait for a year. And like Ron Osborne was saying, that at the end of the time, even if we win that grievance, did we really win? Because we still lost this much time for that. So something like delaying implementation of a route adjustment until all of the grievances have been adjudicated would be something. But then my question was, how would that help with like a 271G special inspection when the person is wanting relief on their route now instead of having to wait until the end of the grievance process? Because there's always the potential that management could weaponize the grievance process against us in that way and take that delay to make it so that it's, it takes longer for them to get that relief on their route. So I was able to get that asked, and Ron Osborne said that he would write that down, which was exciting. That they took it seriously. So
Hey, you did a good job.
I'll follow
every time
up
you
with
get
Ron.
Yeah.
yeah, make sure he did it.
So, Richie, you mentioned you've been to a lot of these RAP sessions over the years. I've been to a lot of them with you,
yeah, I know.
actually. And one of the cool things that always happens anytime we get together at whether it's a state convention, a national RAP session, or a branch meeting, is there's a lot of conversation that happens, sort of networking and that type thing. I'm curious what feedback throughout the day-to-day did you get from other branch leaders?
Well, I didn't talk to too many today, but those that I did speak to really enjoyed the whole platform. They enjoyed hearing what was going on instead of speculating what may be going on. They enjoyed having their voices heard. It was just a good feeling. It was just a good feeling. There were some things that I heard that I was surprised at, say, the 204B issue, about all the things they were going after, how big an item it was out in the field. That was kind of surprising. The Article 8, that's always an issue, especially every time we change it. There's a multitude of grievances, and it takes forever to straighten that out. But overall, it was a very, very calm experience. There wasn't a lot of infighting. There wasn't a lot of derogatory comment, which happens. It was just a good. It just felt good today. I can tell you that it did. It really felt good, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, being as a union, being united going into something like collective bargaining is really important,
Yeah.
and that's a whole, really a big part of the reason for a lot of the processes that we're trying to use in collective bargaining preparation. All right, so last question, and this is for all three of you, so I want all three of you to answer. I know all three of you are going to take a lot of the things that you heard here and learned here and go back and share with your members. So I'm just curious how you're going to go back and do that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot to commit to anything, but I know you all three, and I know you're going to do that. So I'm curious how you're going to take this back to your members. Richie, we'll start with you.
Well, I do an occasional Facebook page. I don't do it too often because I can't, as you know, I speak from the heart. I can't read off of anything. Mm-hmm. I read, I study, I look at it, and I throw it out, and then everything I say just comes out. So I'm either going to do that. I was going to do one anyway because I got a couple of things to say about management. So I'll add this to it. And then we have a December meeting. I'm expecting quite a few, up to 150 people at the meeting. So I will review, like I did for the Committee of Presidents. I'll review everything we went over and talk about some of the topics. But, you you got to condense 4 hours of conversation or 8 hours of conversation into 20 minutes because I got so many other things. But I'll get it out there, that's for sure. I'll answer any question like I always do, like you always do. And we'll get the word out. I mean, let's face it, anytime you do negotiations, you ask for the sky, but you know that a lot of it's not going to happen. But there's some really good meat and potato things that came out today that I hope that we can move forward. I really do. Some things that'll be meaningful. And that's what I try to impress. You can't get everything you want, but important things you shoot for. And we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, look, that's really well said. And a big part of bargaining preparation is, no one ever gets everything they propose. But being prepared and prioritizing things correctly, what it does is it prepares you for any circumstance that comes up during that bargaining process to ultimately achieve the best deal that we can. Jenilee, how are you going to share it with your members?
So I'll probably talk about it at our December meeting. The most people, like I said, we've got pretty good attendance at our branch meetings, and the people who are the most concerned with how work rules and all of that impacts them, those are the ones that come to the meetings, and they're the ones who have the most to say about it. I'll definitely share it with the rest of the members as well, probably over an email or Facebook post. But I'm actually considering having everybody just do our own roundtable in the branch and figure out what are the specific issues that our branch, and we have much larger branches, our branch is smaller, but so that I can maybe bring some of those ideas back or, send those off to you guys as well. And, sometimes it's just about finding the holes in the language, how would this, maybe, this idea was really good for a bigger branch, but how would it work for a smaller branch? And we can maybe expose some of those ideas. And I don't know, I think that'll probably be most of what I do.
That sounds like you're going to keep people busy.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm going to make them work.
There you go.
Jose?
So we have a bi-monthly newsletter, and generally after any type of training, I use that as an opportunity to just discuss the training. Because you all write articles monthly as well, and sometimes it's a little difficult to try to find something
I'm
to
down
write
to
about.
2 months. I'm down to every other month now.
So
Yeah, we're once a quarter. So.
yeah, we're every 2 months. So this is actually very welcome because it's going to give me something to just be able to write about and share with the membership. Also, our December branch meeting, touch on it a little bit as well, and just kind of let people know what's going on. That it's not something that it's so recent from the signing of the last agreement that we're already talking about the new agreement, but that in itself is exciting as well.
Yep.
Just people, the people that were excited to some of the changes that, we can explain, look, there might be some slight modifications now that we know what's going on and how we can improve that. And the people that maybe weren't too excited about the bargaining agreement, it's exciting to know that we're in it again, and this might be a little more, make more people happy about this. Overall, I like the changes to the whole thing. Albuquerque, as you know, is one of the pilot sites for NERP and NEMP program, and the fact that it's now included in the national agreement, that's very exciting for us. We tried really hard to make that very successful, and to see that and to be able to share that with the membership, say, look, we were selected to be part of this pilot program, and look what came of it. So I think it really gives people, when you can take this information home and explain it and talk about it, especially when there's something that people talked about, to be able to say, this is the result. We worked hard, and now it's part of this agreement. So I'm excited to just talk to people about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for taking some time to join us after a long day.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, we really appreciate the work, of course, that you did today and your participation. But you all three do an excellent job for the members of your branches. So we appreciate you for what you do for those members.
Yep.
I got one more question before we get out of here, Brian. So day one's in the books.
Yeah.
What's in store for day two?
Yeah, day two is the actual rap session conference, if you want to call it that. And in tomorrow morning, will have a lot of things to share with our branch and state leaders that are here about collective bargaining and preparation. We'll focus on the economic pieces of bargaining, wages and benefits and things like that. Of course, also talk about what we have been dealing with the Postal Service and what we've been dealing with on Capitol Hill and with the administration for basically all of 2025. It's been a tumultuous year in a lot of ways, especially if you look at the world around us and what's happened to other federal employees and how we've had to navigate that, but maybe more importantly, how we have to, looking forward, ensure that we continue to do the things that have worked, but also continue to grow and build our influence to fight any attacks on us. And then there will be an opportunity for everyone in attendance to have a rap session. That's what it is, to offer feedback and input and ask questions and things like that. We probably will conclude by noon tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Yep.
So I just want to thank the Executive Council for putting on the presentation today. They did a great job. I want to thank all the branch presidents that are here in attendance for doing the work of the union. Thank you for leading this union into the future. And thank you to these branch presidents for taking some of their nighttime and coming in here and talking with us. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Fight Like Hell podcast. Please subscribe so that you don't miss an episode, and please share this podcast with your NALC brothers and sisters. You can follow the NALC on social media, on Facebook, X, and Instagram. You can find links to our accounts in the episode description. May your steward be by your side, and may your union have your back. Thanks for listening. See you soon.